Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier sessions, as a part of understanding the theory of consumer behavior, we discussed about what are the characteristics of human wants and what are the categories of human wants also, and the theory of diminishing marginal utility. We discussed about it, which tells us about the additional satisfaction generated by consuming one additional unit keeps on reducing or diminishing. That is the theory of diminishing marginal utility. And while understanding the theory of diminishing marginal utility, we should understand definitely the terms. What is total utility, what is marginal utility, and what is utility first of all. These all things have been discussed in the earlier sessions, including the assumptions under this theory of diminishing marginal utility as well as limitations of such theory. Though there are certain limitations, definitely the theory of diminishing marginal utility is one of the very important theories in the microeconomics particularly. Now after that theory, let us continue with another theory of consumer behavior only, which is also propounded by the same person, Alfred Marshall. That is the theory of consumer surplus. Of course, this is derived from the law of diminishing marginal utility only. This is not a separate theory. The theory of consumer surplus and the theory of diminishing marginal utility and even the law of demand, all of them are interlinked with each other, and all of them are mostly the works of Alfred Marshall only. So there is always a link between them, one theory to another theory. But what does the theory of consumer surplus say? We'll have to look at that in this session. And not only that, how the consumer surplus could be useful in practical scenarios, whether it is to government or whether it is to certain business people like some monopolists, how that is going to be applied. Also, we'll have a general understanding of that in today's session. But before that, let us understand the background of consumer surplus and why consumer surplus arises first of all. For that, we should already know, which we know, that the demand for a commodity definitely depends upon the utility of a commodity to that consumer. If a consumer really perceives that, if a consumer gets that, a kind of utility from a commodity, then only he will purchase. Imagine if a consumer is getting more utility from a commodity, he will be ready to pay more for that commodity. And if he is not getting that much utility, he will be ready to pay only less amount of money to purchase that commodity. That is common, which means definitely the consumers, being rational, will pay a particular price for a commodity according to the utility that they can generate from that commodity. And we also already discussed about when the consumer will be in equilibrium. A consumer will pay exactly that price, ideally speaking, not that always happens. Ideally, the consumer should pay exactly that price which is equivalent to the marginal utility the consumption of that commodity might derive or might give to him. So, that much price is okay to pay. More than that, he will definitely not pay. But what if he pays less than that is the concept of consumer surplus. That lesser price that the consumer pays, but more utility he gets from the same commodity, that difference is called as simply consumer surplus. And this can be observed in certain types of commodities, in certain types of goods. The consumers are ready to pay. They are ready to pay more for certain types of goods than what they are actually paying for them. So their willingness to pay is more. Why they are willing? Because they think that particular commodity will give them more utility. It is their perception. According to that, they are ready to pay more, but actually they end up paying less. This difference is what is called as consumer surplus. Whatever is that extra satisfaction which they derive by paying less than what they are ready to pay is called as consumer surplus. That's what is defined by Marshall like this. The excess of the price which a consumer would be willing to pay, rather than go without a thing over that which he actually does pay. So if he wants to pay, he is ready to pay more rather than going without that particular commodity. So he is ready to pay more. But how much he is ready to pay more? He is ready to pay more over and above what he actually pay. So the difference between these two, what he is ready to pay and what he actually pays, is what is called as consumer surplus. So the simple way this can be understood like this with the equation. The consumer surplus is nothing but what a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. That's it. That is theory of consumer surplus. Once again, this is all theory. Nobody knows exactly how much they are ready to pay. Each consumer will have their own thoughts. We cannot have a collective thought in one price. All those things are practically not possible. We all know that. But this is a theory which says, in general, for every commodity, at an individual level, definitely there is a price that a consumer will have in his mind. And how he will have in his mind about the price of a commodity or the price that he is ready to pay, some number he will have because he is a rational consumer. He knows how much he is ready to pay. But actually what he pays is according to the market prices prevailing in the market. So this difference between those two is called as consumer surplus. And as we discussed just now, this theory of consumer surplus is already derived from the law of diminishing marginal utility only. There is nothing new here. And we already know all these things. When more and more things, if we have, the lesser marginal utility they will generate. In other words, if we purchase more of a good, marginal utility goes on diminishing. That is the theory of diminishing marginal utility. Already we know that. And we also know that when a consumer will be in equilibrium. When is that? When the marginal utility of a commodity is equal to its price. Then the consumer is said to be in equilibrium. At that price, he is okay to do that. But if in the reality the price is remaining same for all the units that he purchases, he definitely gets extra utility for the units consumed by him except for the one at the margin. In other words, when the marginal utility equals to price, then there is no consumer surplus. But what if the price is lesser than marginal utility? Then what? Then there is a consumer surplus and the marginal utility is not going to be same. It is going to diminish. So whatever this extra utility or extra surplus for the consumer is what we call as consumer surplus. To understand this easily, we can look at this example. The consumer surplus in case of some commodity, whatever it is, X. Price of that is 20. See, price is same. Price is prevailing in the market. That is reality. Price is not a perception. But we have to understand that utility is a perception. Utility is not always the reality. It is a perception. So if at all the consumer thinks that from consuming 1 unit of a particular commodity, he can get a marginal utility of worth 30. That is why money is the measuring rod of utility. 30 rupees worth utility he is going to get from consuming 1 unit. But market price is only 20. In other words, what? There is a consumer surplus of 10 in that particular case. Will he buy it or not? Definitely yes. Because there is a consumer surplus, happily he will buy. But we know that if he wants to consume 1 more unit of the same commodity, the marginal utility will decrease from 30 to 28, let us say. But the price is going to be still the same. But what happened because of that? The consumer surplus also got decreased, but still there is a surplus. Like this, as the marginal utility keeps on decreasing, since the price is remaining the same, there is consumer surplus also which is decreasing. That we can observe from this particular table. So all these things are changing according to his consumption increasing by one more unit. That is why we are talking about marginal utility. Marginal is always about one more, one plus. So the marginal utility of consuming or buying a 5th unit was 22. But price is still 20. Still he has a consumer surplus of 2. But when the consumer will be in equilibrium, if he buys the 6th unit, when he is going to derive a marginal utility of only 20 and price is also 20, then the consumer surplus is 0. That's it. After that, he will not purchase any more units. Already he is in equilibrium. The 7th unit he will never purchase. Why? Because the marginal utility that one additional unit gives him is only 18, whereas he has to pay 20 rupees to buy that. Why will he pay? He is a rational consumer. Why will he pay more for a product where he is deriving a lesser marginal utility. That is why the seventh unit the consumer will never consume or never purchase. That is a out of the situation now. But till he reaches equilibrium, till the time he reaches equilibrium, did he enjoy consumer surplus or not is the question. Answer is yes. He did enjoy consumer surplus. Why? Because his marginal utility is always more than the price till the point he reaches the equilibrium. In this case, the equilibrium is sixth unit. If he consumes 6 units, if he purchases 6 units, then he is in equilibrium. Like that we can say. So till the time the consumer reaches equilibrium, once again, what is equilibrium? Where the marginal utility is equal to price. Where the marginal utility is equal to price, then only the consumer is said to be in equilibrium. Till that time, he keeps on getting extra utility. That extra utility is what we call as consumer surplus. By the way, don't think that practically somebody is going to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units and check whether there is a consumer surplus or not. This is theory, just imaginary situations. We have to keep that in mind. This example, what it proves that we should understand. What it is proving is when a consumer has a situation where marginal utility is more than price, or you can put it otherwise, price is less than the marginal utility. That means he has to pay only a lesser amount, whereas the utility that he generates from consumption of that commodity is much more. Then the consumer is said to be in consumer surplus. He will be ready to buy that product as long as there is consumer surplus. If zero consumer surplus is there, that means the person is at equilibrium. The consumer is at equilibrium. Beyond that, nobody will buy because that is stupidity. Nobody will be willing to pay more price for a lesser marginal utility. That is a point we need to understand from this particular table. Not that really people will be doing it. Don't be under a wrong impression or misconception like that. So always we have to understand the limitations of the theories. So in this theory, what is told? What is consumer surplus is what a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. How do we know consumer is ready to pay? That we don't have to worry. That if at all any person is there who has an idea about how much he has to pay, how much he is ready to pay, from that, if at all, definitely there is a price which is prevailing in the market. If we reduce, what we get is called consumer surplus. So when we say what we get, we are not going to do any of these things in real life. This is purely theoretical, textbook purposes, academic purposes only, nothing related to application. But does consumer surplus theory have application? Yes. Are we going to do that? No, definitely not. We are only just going to understand the theory of consumer surplus. That has to be clearly understood. Theory has to be conceptually very much understood very clearly. That's enough. Application of that is a secondary part that is not at this level, definitely at a much higher level. Somebody can think about it. As of now, consumer surplus is what the consumer enjoys by having a more marginal utility than a price till he reaches equilibrium where the marginal utility is equivalent to price. Dot. That is consumer surplus. So in this particular case, what is the total consumer surplus the consumer is getting? If you add up all of this, 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4 plus 2, that will come to around 30. That much consumer surplus he is enjoying because for each unit he has a consumer surplus individually of 10, 8, 6, 4 and 2. Adding all of that, the total consumer surplus that the consumer might enjoy in this particular example is 30. That can be taken from the table as an illustration for concept of consumer surplus. Now we can understand this even using the graph. So this graph indicates also the consumer surplus. Understand what is there on the x-axis and what is there on the y-axis. On the x-axis, we have the commodity. That is amount of the commodity or quantity, we can say, actually better than amount. Amount, again, people think it is money. Not necessarily. We can say the quantity of the commodity that is consumed. And on the y-axis, we have price of the commodity or marginal utility of the commodity. In either case, we know the curve is going to be downwards only. If price is there on the y-axis and quantity is there on the x-axis, we call it demand curve. If marginal utility is there on the y-axis and quantity is there on the x-axis, we call it theory of diminishing marginal utility, but both are same. Both are indicating the same, both are resulting in the same phenomena. So on the y-axis, any of them can be considered here. So if we consider price is there on the y-axis along with marginal utility, x-axis is only same, that is quantity of commodity. Rather than calling it amount, better to call it quantity of commodity, we can say, that is on x-axis. Now what is happening here? Naturally, the marginal utility curve will slope downwards. We know that. That is what theory of diminishing marginal utility will tell us. That is the curve we are talking about. That is the marginal utility curve we are talking about. So MU is what that curve is representing as marginal utility curve. Is it the demand curve also? Definitely yes, it is the demand curve also. But we can use it in different purposes in the different context. So let us say here we take this as marginal utility curve. That is a marginal utility curve, MU we can say, which is sloping downwards. Now let us take what happens here. Let us start from this point. Let us say at this point of price, consumer will not buy anything, zero he will buy. We will not buy because the price is too high. On the y-axis there is price, if you remember. Too much high price, he cannot buy that also. Slowly little bit of price is reduced. Yes, he will increase little bit of consumption of that. So the quantity has increased a bit. Like that it has further increased and reached this point. Later as the price kept on reducing, the quantity kept on increasing. That is the demand curve also in this case. But the point is, in this case, when we have on the y-axis the marginal utility as well as on the x-axis the quantity, when the consumer is in equilibrium, when the price of that commodity is equivalent to the marginal utility, then only the consumer is at equilibrium. Now let us say, see, the price is decreasing, demand increasing, everybody knows, but price will not be decreasing like that, right? There will be one price in the market. Let us say, for example, OP is the price of that product which prevails in the market, which is a fact. OP is reality. This is the price of the product. OP is the price of the product that is prevailing in the market. But when he has consumed this much quantity, where the price was high and marginal utility was also very high. Same way, when he consumed this much, the marginal utility was higher than price. When he consumed this much, again the marginal utility was higher than price, again the marginal utility was higher than price. Till what time? Till he consumed this much. So what can be considered as equilibrium quantity? How many number of units of commodity he will buy, we can say that will be OQ number of units. So OQ number of units is the quantity that he will purchase. That is his equilibrium point R. Why is it equilibrium point R? Once again, we have to go back to the same theory, where the price is equivalent to the marginal utility. R is the point on the marginal utility line at which the price and R are same. That is when the consumer will be in equilibrium. But till that point, above this point, what he has enjoyed, all this area, this entire area which is already shaded, this area, what he enjoyed is what we call as consumer surplus. Why? Because the marginal utility that is generated earlier has been higher than the price. That's what always has been happening. At point R, the marginal utility R is equal to price P. That is the equilibrium. So how much quantity he will consume? What is his equilibrium quantity? That is Q. So exactly how much the consumer will purchase is only Q. By purchasing Q, how much utility is generating is R. So till he reaches Q, he keeps on purchasing the commodity, and Q is called, that is why, the equilibrium of the consumer. And once he reaches Q, or the point R, marginal utility, he will not go further. So these all points will not happen. These are all not going to happen. These points are only there on the line, but consumer will not go beyond Q. So the maximum quantity that he purchases will be only OQ, we can say. And why is he doing that? Because till that point he is getting a marginal utility of more than price, or at least at that point he is getting a marginal utility equivalent to price. Before qth unit, the marginal utility is greater than price, and at q, the marginal utility is equal to price. That's what it is. That is the consumer surplus, what he is getting before buying qth unit. What is happening? The marginal utility is greater than price. That means these units fetch consumer surplus to the consumer. That is a shaded area, we can say. That is a shaded area. We can be calling it as consumer surplus. Now, just let us understand from this graph how to identify different points. There are many points here. How to identify them? This will be in the question, definitely in the examination. So understand that carefully. What is total utility is represented by? That is represented by the total area which is below the curve, that is marginal utility curve. So this was a question, if you remember. The area below the demand curve, marginal utility curve, both are same. Area below that is called as total utility. And what can be that? Total utility be? Now point wise, if we see, what is the total utility point here? That is D, you can say O, Q, R. So these 4 points, whatever the area is covered in between these 4 points, that's what we can call as total utility. That's what is given here. O, D, R, Q, whatever the way you call it. That is total utility. O, D, R, Q. That area under that is called total utility. In that, how much actually the consumer is spending? He is not spending ODRQ because he is paying only a price of P. How much he is actually spending is OPRQ. That much he is actually spending. That is what OPRQ consumer is actually paying. Now from the graph, if you understand how much utility he is generating totally is ODRQ, that means that much amount he is ready to pay, or that much amount he is ready to spend, but he is actually spending only OPRQ. When he is willing to spend this much, I'm just doing it freehand, but he is spending only this much. So what is the remaining? This area, that is what is consumer surplus. So out of the total utility that the consumer generates from ODRQ, actual amount spent is only OPRQ. Then naturally, what is the area of consumer surplus here? That is DPR. These are just denotions. Don't think this will be staying always. A, B, C, X, Y, Z, whatever they can be called. These are just letters. So what is consumer surplus in this particular graph? DPR is consumer surplus. That's it. This graph will tell the entire theory of consumer surplus in a simple way. So this graph is telling us at a price of P, a consumer will be willing to buy Q number of units and he will spend an amount of OPRQ. But because by spending OPRQ, he is getting a total utility of DORQ or ODRQ, and because of which he is getting a consumer surplus of DPR. That is the area of consumer surplus in a marginal utility graph or a demand graph, where the consumer is in equilibrium at point R. He buys the quantity Q and pays a price of P, but he gets a total utility which is higher than that. That is ODRQ. The excess utility, whatever he gets, over and above what he is actually paying, is only called as consumer surplus. That is the theory of consumer surplus in a nutshell. Now, naturally, like the theory of diminishing marginal utility, this theory also has limitations. Just now, as we also identified, is it really going to happen? Generally not. It is hypothetical, illusory, not real. Really, it is not possible to measure the satisfaction. Just impossible, practically speaking. It cannot be measured. But this is theory. If measured, if so, all these are concepts, just imaginary situations. So really, is it possible to measure all this, quantify all this? Question mark. Difficult. Not possible. So that is why this theory also suffers from lot of limitations. One of them is basically the consumer surplus itself cannot be measured precisely. That is the first limitation. Why is that? Because marginal utilities measurement itself is difficult. Utility measurement itself is difficult because utility is a satisfaction. Expressing it quantifiably is also difficult. Then from that you need marginal utilities, from that you have to compare it with price, and then you have to find out consumer surplus. This is all practically not possible. That is a limitation we need to understand from this theory. It's a limitation, that's all. Does not mean the theory does not hold good. Theory does hold good, but only, let us say, for laboratory purposes, not in the real world. You cannot prove it with numbers in the real world, but the concept will not be there. Yes, it will be there. How many times you would have felt, just like, for example, if you take the example of earlier what we have taken, say you are in a desert, thirsty from 2 days, don't have any water, but suddenly somebody is there to sell a water bottle to you. How much will you pay? How much you are ready to pay? You may be ready to pay whatever amount you have. Let us say if you have 10,000 rupees in your pocket, you will be ready to pay 10,000 also to that person. That is the utility that you might generate. That is in your context, in your situation, your utility you only will know. And you are ready to pay 10,000 rupees. But imagine that person is so genuine and he has sold the water bottle at MRP 20 rupees only. Then you got a consumer surplus of 9,980 rupees. But that who knows? You only know that. Anybody who consumes, they only can feel that. They cannot quantify that. That is the point. So the limitation is there, but tendency, no. Tendency is definitely going to be there. We cannot say consumer surplus theory itself is a flop. Theory of diminishing marginal utility is a flop. Theory of demand is a flop, because these are all not possible to be practically checked in the real world. No, that would be wrong. That particular learning area itself should not be like that. While learning, we should keep very clear distinction between the theory and application. Theory is theory. Application is altogether a different story. We cannot use every theory in the real life implications. With the real life implications, it is not possible also. And that is the limitations of the theories. And there is no secret in that. It is already told. Even the Marshall also knows that. Not that Marshall doesn't know this. Everybody knows that. The only point is we should also know that. These are all theories, and they are having a lot of limitations in practical implementation. That's it. Then another limitation of this is about necessaries. In case of necessaries, the marginal utilities of the earlier units are infinitely large. Again, same thing, like water example, if you take, water is a necessity. What is the marginal utility that the one water bottle generates to you in the desert? Infinitely large. You cannot quantify that. It's almost infinite. So naturally, the consumer surplus also is always infinite. So that is why for necessities, this theory of consumer surplus may not be applicable, because once again, they will give us too much of satisfaction when we consume them the first time. Why? Because they are so much necessary. They quench our thirst, hunger and all. So while you are hungry for so many days and suddenly if you have one biryani, that gives infinite satisfaction. Means the marginal utility of that first commodity, what you consume there, is infinite. So that much consumer surplus you got. Can you really quantify that in the money terms? Can you tell that I will pay only 500 rupees for this biryani? Not like that. So the point is, in case of necessities, at least the earlier units will have infinite consumer surplus. That is a point to be noted. It's not a limitation. It's actually a point to be noted. In other words, it cannot be quantified. Infinite here does not mean anything. It only means that it is impossible to quantify that or define that. That much infinite consumer surplus people might enjoy, particularly in case of the consumption of necessaries, that too earlier units of consumption. Then the consumer surplus derived from a commodity is affected also by the availability of substitutes. That is always there in the limitation. We don't consider the substitutes in this marginal utility analysis. That limitation continues here. We don't consider complementary commodities also. So that is a limitation. Definitely that limitation is carried on here. But practically the consumer surplus is not just impacted by the marginal utility generated by consumption of one commodity. It is also impacted by the availability of substitutes in the market, which is not explained by this theory. So this theory has that limitation. But we know definitely substitutes have an impact on demand, definitely also on consumer surplus. That means these two are related with each other, though the concept of substitutes has not been stressed by Alfred Marshall. And other things once again same. For example, in certain special type of goods, exceptions like prestige value goods like diamonds. How can we say that what is the utility that we get from having one diamond or having a second diamond like that? So there is no rule like that. So the defining utilities will be almost impossible. So again, that does not fit into this theory of consumer surplus. And one more thing is, the consumer surplus cannot be measured in the terms of money because the marginal utility of money changes. Of course, what we assumed is, what Marshall assumed is marginal utility of money remains constant, but really it is not possible. Marginal utility of money changes. Along with that, what automatically also changes? The consumer surplus also changes, and it cannot be measured in terms of money because of the consumer's stock of money always diminishes as they are consuming more and more. When they are consuming more and more, purchasing more and more, the stock of money diminishes. And the marginal utility of money also diminishes. Along with that, the consumer surplus calculation becomes difficult to measure. That is why it is not possible always to measure the consumer surplus in the form of money. In other words, the money being taken as a measuring rod of utility by assuming marginal utility of money will be always constant. Since that assumption is unrealistic, consumer surplus calculation in the form of money is also unrealistic. We have here consumer surplus of 10 rupees, 8 rupees, 6 rupees and all that. That is all unrealistic. That is not practically correct. So that is another limitation of this theory. Ultimately, it is all one. Simply, it is not practical. That's all. Reasons we are telling different things, but ultimately the essence is same. These are theories, but not practically possible to be quantified and tested. That is a point. And another point is this utility can be measured in terms of money. Same thing actually. Can it be really measured in terms of money? Practically not possible. So a lot of modern economics believe that this utility cannot be measured in the form of money, whereas this theory assumes that. So all the limitations of the theory of diminishing marginal utility are the limitations of the utility analysis itself. All the assumptions of the marginal utility analysis also apply to theory of consumer surplus. Naturally, because of that, the theory of consumer surplus also will have the same limitations. That is the essence we can understand from that discussion. Now there is some kind of practical implications which are given in this study textbook, but we don't need to really go into the details of them because each of them we can discuss about them one day. That is not required. So only point here is to note that yes, there is a bit of practical implications of consumer surplus as a theory. Will there be there or not? Definitely yes. So what will be that? Practically how the consumer surplus might be affecting businesses or governments. Majorly for the business firms, they can identify how much is the consumer surplus enjoyed by different segments of their customers. They can identify because any business will have different customer segments. Certain segments of the customers might enjoy bigger consumer surplus, certain customers might enjoy lesser consumer surplus. But those who perceive, point is, large surplus are more likely to repeat their purchases. So where a business is able to identify which segment of the customers is having a higher consumer surplus in their mind, all this is in mind only. They perceive, they just think a large surplus is there. They are ready to pay more, but they look at this particular product as cheap for them. Because they are ready to pay more, they are asked to be paying only less. So they have a large surplus. What happens normally is those are the people who will repeat their purchases. So those will be the loyal customers, those will be the repeat customers for the business firms. So business firms should be constantly observing which segment of their customers are having or feeling a bigger consumer surplus. That they should observe. Again, they cannot quantify it, not easy. Don't go into how are we going to do this and all. How are we going to do this? We cannot do that. Business firms are supposed to do that. How they are going to do that? For that only they have bigger courses like IIMs, MBAs and all that. And they try to get the data from consumers by spending lakhs and crores of rupees and with the form of feedback forms, so many things. They try to quantify what is normally not quantifiable. That's a huge exercise. That's a statistical management marketing exercise. So we cannot just think that By having this point, we are understanding all the business things. We understand certain things, very limited things. To that extent only our scope can be limited. So point here to note is what? Definitely the consumer surplus concept is useful for business firms, because if they can identify the consumer segments which are enjoying bigger consumer surplus, they can be sure that these people are all repeat customers. Generally, you take care of them more. Naturally, any business firm will take care of repeat customers more than the one-time customer. So that is a possible application of consumer surplus. That is first point. And second point, setting prices is a very important decision for many businesses. So where there are different types of market segments, not just consumer segments, market segments, like different countries we can say, different regions we can say. So if there are market segments which are willing and able to pay higher prices, naturally you will fix higher prices there for the same products. From that, they can make profits, more profits. So they can use what is called as price discrimination. We will understand the concept of price discrimination in a detailed manner when we discuss the types of markets. One of them is monopoly. In monopolies, different markets, the organizations can charge different prices. For example, just one country and another country, the prices are not same. For example, in India, Toyota car is treated to be a luxury car. It is one of the almost dream cars for many people, upper middle class types. But in most of the other countries, Toyota is the basic car. Like normally, first time when somebody earns money in India, we purchase a bike, let us say. Like that, in many countries, they just buy a Toyota car. That is the basic thing that they can have in their life. That is a basic car. But in India, it is a luxury car. So the pricing also is high in India compared to others. So the segment itself is considered to be a different market segment in India. Like that, different products, like if you take Apple products, iPhone, ipad and all that, these are all highly priced in Gulf region. Why is that? Because they are able to pay, they are willing to pay. Why should not Apple take profit out of that? They will take super profit out of that. So they price these Apple iPhones, iPads and all Apple products at a very high price in the Gulf region, Dubai, etc. Generally those are more expensive compared to US and Europe, like that. So many reasons might be there. But if they have a little bit of control on the market, if they have this monopolistic power they can enjoy on the market, they will have price discrimination. That's what firms can do. Heavily competitive market where there are many substitutes available, there the price discrimination might not be possible. So that is a completely different discussion, which we will do at a later stage. But at this point in time, what we can understand is when there are different market segments, we can charge higher prices in that market segment where the consumer surplus is high. So consumer surplus is encashed basically by the companies and businesses. Higher consumer surplus can be encashed by setting higher prices for the products. If consumer surplus is already low, if you set high prices, that consumer surplus will vanish, nobody will buy the product. So that is why the business managers can take better pricing decisions by using the concept of consumer surplus, not quantified once again, at least by understanding the tendencies they can do that. How to quantify tendencies is a bigger thing. That is not our scope. But definitely consumer surplus concept is going to be used for understanding which segment of the customers are going to be repeated customers, which segments of the markets we can charge higher prices. Those things will be usefully, we can use the concept of consumer surplus very productively. Like that, in many cases, this can be used. For example, large scale investment decisions also can use the concept of consumer surplus to understand how much the projects may fetch while doing the cost benefit analysis. This concept can be utilized. That's a very generic statement. While doing cost benefit analysis, any concept can be utilized. Consumer surplus is also one of that. So this particular point is basically useless point. It is a generic statement. Not that this is false. That is a generic statement. Any time consumer surplus or any other concept, any investment decision will have hundreds of different theories which are involved in that. One of them is consumer surplus also. So consumer surplus is also considered to be a factor while doing the cost benefit analysis of large scale investment decisions. That is one point to be known. Again, repeated mostly. There is the same things repeated. So here, the consumer surplus knowledge is important for the firms particularly when they raise the product prices. Same thing now. Even the second point also talking about setting the prices. Now we are talking about raising the prices. Setting the prices is about two different markets. We are talking about price discrimination in two different market segments. Now, existing products, a company wants to increase the price. Can they do that? If already the consumer surplus is very low, can they do that? Then definitely no, because consumers may not have any consumer surplus at that price and they may stop buying that product. So definitely any particular organization wants to increase their prices, they cannot do that until and unless they understand the concept of consumer surplus, and if they increase prices, definitely they should expect that they make fewer sales naturally, because the theory of demand works. Consumer surplus is reducing because anyway marginal utility is also reducing, and of course also the demand is reducing when the prices are increasing. So when the prices are increasing, definitely the demand will reduce. When the prices are decreasing, then the demand will increase. So when the consumer surplus is less, naturally the people, the customers will buy less. That will result in lower sales. So high consumer surplus can be used for increasing the product prices by business managers is the point here, which is told in the fourth point. These are all practical applications of the theory of consumer surplus. And not only that, this is useful for finance ministers also in deciding taxes, particularly where taxes can be levied on which type of products. Normally we see this while looking at the tax rates on different types of products. So where there is a high consumer surplus, they will be taxed high naturally. Where there is a low consumer surplus already, they will be taxed low. So usually what we can expect is increase in the rates of taxes on the commodities yielding high consumer surplus. So the point is everybody wants a share in this consumer surplus. Consumer, if he is ready to pay and he is actually paying less, that feeling of having a benefit has to be somehow encashed by the businessmen also. It should be encashed by governments also by increasing their tax collections. That is why we see luxury commodities will have higher tax, like sin goods will have higher tax, because people are still ready to pay. Like sin goods, like bad commodities, like tobacco products, every year the government keeps on increasing the excise duty on them, but still the people buy. Why? Because people are still ready to pay more. When the people will stop actually consuming that, nobody knows. So that is why they will enjoy, or they will actually encash the concept of consumer surplus, which is there in the minds of the people. So people are willing to pay always a higher price than what it is, particularly for such kind of commodities. So that will be understood by the finance ministers, and they try to encash that by increasing the taxes on such kind of commodities, luxury commodities, sin goods, bad commodities. These things are the ones where they will try to impose more taxes and make more money. And why are they able to do that? Because the consumers are willing to pay more. Consumers are willing to pay more, but actual price is less. So this gap can be filled by increasing taxes, so that a part of the consumer surplus can be encashed by the government in the form of taxes. That is what governments do while raising the taxes on certain types of commodities. If already the consumers are the public are not having any consumer surplus, they are already burdened with so much of high price, and the marginal utility what they are getting is nothing from that commodity. If that is the case, then government cannot increase the taxes. It has to decrease the taxes. It has to decrease the taxes means basically it has to decrease the prices also along with that. So the increase or decrease of taxes, increase of decrease of prices, charging different prices to different market segments, large scale investment decisions, understanding which customer can be repeated customer, all these points are some of the practical applications of the concept of consumer surplus. So with that, we can conclude the first category of the theory of consumer behavior, we can say. That is consisting of two subparts. One is the theory of diminishing marginal utility and the theory of consumer surplus. In the next session, we can continue the discussion on the indifference curve analysis and the theory of budget line or price line, and how these two can be mixed together so that we can understand how the consumer attains equilibrium in a different perspective. So far, what we discussed, we are talking about is a cardinal, measured approach of utility. Cardinal approach, we are calling it, where the utility is measurable, total utility was also measurable, marginal utility was also measurable, consumer surplus was also measurable. These are all cardinal approach, what we have discussed so far. In the next session, we will discuss ordinal approach to the theory of consumer behavior, which will be about the indifference curves analysis, we can call it. That we'll discuss in the next session. Till that time, take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much.